Fighters of the Unmanned Aerial Systems Unit of the 27th Brigade of Ukraine's National Guard have intercepted and struck Russian Army's S-300V anti-aircraft missile system in the occupied territory of Zaporizhzhia region. The system was destroyed by missiles fired from a drone. After the initial damage, the crew members abandoned the equipment and tried to escape from the area. It should be noted that the average cost of the S-300 systems is about $120 million.
The Azov Army Corps has taken up full operational control over stabilizing the Russian breakthrough at Pokrovsk, with the situation reaching critical levels and threatening to overturn a year of Ukraine's fortification work. Azov and its battalions are immediately getting to work on smashing the Russian salient back across the river. Euromaidan press media outlet says, as Russians took Ukrainians by surprise, they broke through 18 kilometers deep behind the Ukrainian front line and penetrated through Ukraine's new Donbas defense line while it was unmanned. However, as the reality of the situation got through to the Ukrainian High Command, they acted quickly and redeployed Ukraine's 1st National Guard Army Corps, led by the famed Azov Brigade at its head. The Russian salient is deep but narrow, enough so that it could be pincered, cut off from reinforcements, and destroyed if the Azov Corps was up to the task. Euromaidan press says the recently deployed forces immediately got to work, as the first step was to prevent the Russians from expanding their salient, allowing them to entrench and threaten Ukrainian logistics further on an operational scale. Open-source military analysts show that the 1st Da Vinci Assault Regiment attacked the Russian breakthrough head-on, and during the first day of clashes, they were able to blunt the spearhead and push the Russians back to Zoloty Koldiaz. Recent reports from various Russian, Ukrainian and Western military analysts now show that they conducted a follow-up operation the next day and pushed Russians out of the settlement and are overrunning Russian positions up to 4 kilometers below, recapturing the new Donbas defense line in the process. Further south, along the thin Russian salient, elements of the Azov Brigade launched rapid counterattacks on the Russians' left flank, as the 93rd Mechanized Brigade assaulted the Russians from the east. Satellite data shows numerous impact craters of Russian aviation glide bombs all over both sides of the salient, the locations of which indicate the Ukrainian attack was very successful and resulted in the capture of Kutuzivka, with prominent Russian and Ukrainian sources noting Ukrainians have fully encircled the Russians in 2 separate pockets. Euromaidan press says, possibly realizing their goals were becoming too ambitious, Russians attempted an offshoot maneuver between Rodinsk and Belitsky, hoping to at least achieve an operational encirclement of Pokrovsk as their larger breakthrough was faltering. However, Azov quickly responded to this maneuver as well, rapidly cutting off the Russian axis of advance and eliminating dozens of Russian soldiers. Command of the Azov units reports that in the past several days of fighting, the 1st Army Corps has eliminated 271 Russian soldiers, wounded over 101, and has taken 13 Russian men as prisoners of war. Euromaidan press says, Ukrainians have curbed the immediate threat of the Russian Dobropilya breakthrough and completed the encirclement of an estimated 800 Russian soldiers, hundreds of whom have already been eliminated in the fighting of the past few days. The offensive of the Russian occupation army in Sumy region has completely stalled. Several Z channels associated with the Russian armed forces simultaneously reported the withdrawal of part of the group from this section of the front. The attempt to attack in Sumy region ended in complete failure for the Russians, and preliminarily most of the units are being withdrawn from there. One of the most famous Z resources for the airborne forces admitted. The news from the Sumy direction never ceases to amaze. The group of Marines is completely ceasing its presence there. It is not known whether they are being transferred somewhere or how, but certainly not to their homes. I do not understand what the commanders are thinking, leaving only some units of the 810th Brigade there. Another Z resource, Northern Channel, also confirmed the withdrawal of part of the Russian group from Sumy region. There is no more Marine grouping of Seversk. That's it. The story is over. There are still units of the 810th Brigade in the Sumy direction, but in essence, it is no longer a grouping. We wrote earlier that the 177th, 155th and 40th received the order to redeploy to another direction. This is exactly it, he said. If the information is true, then most likely the Kremlin has abandoned plans to attack Sumy region. Part of the group has probably been left to try to maintain control over the territories that have already been captured. The Ukrainian side has not yet commented on the information. Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, said that Russian troops have suffered a defeat and lost control of several settlements in the Sumy region. In the Sumy region, the enemy has suffered a defeat. Despite deploying a powerful force of elite units, paratroopers, Marines and top motorized rifle formations, they failed to achieve any success over the past 2 months, Syrsky said. He added that Russia's latest attempt to advance near Stepny and Novokostiantynivka ended in complete failure. The invaders were destroyed and pushed back across the state border. We're continuing offensive operations in the area. Realizing the futility of their efforts, the enemy is now redeploying units from Sumy to other fronts, primarily Zaporizhzhia, Syrsky said. According to him, the situation on the front line is currently very difficult. It is marked by the continuation of Russia's strategic offensive operation. At present, the enemy is regrouping and focusing on 2 main sectors. The first is the Pokrovsk sector, which remains a key priority for the Russians. And now the enemy is transferring its forces from the Sumy sector to the Zaporizhzhia direction. In other words, this will be the second axis where they plan to launch active offensive operations, he said. Syrsky noted that as of today, activity in the Zaporizhzhia direction remains low in intensity. However, in carrying out Putin's objectives and directives, the occupiers are attempting to deliver a powerful strike there as well, one that was originally planned a year ago, he added.